Okay, hello, sisters. Let me begin by sharing some highlights from WDI USA's convention, which took place in Atlanta over the weekend. First, the weather was gorgeous, sunny and warm, which is always a pleasure as we head into fall. It was held at Lowe's Hotel, whose staff could not have been more pleasant and accommodating, and the food provided was varied, abundant, and delicious. Despite the fact the hotel was flying the dreaded progress flag higher than the American flag, we did not encounter a single protester. Next, I'd like to tip my hat to the board and the convention coordinating team for providing attendees the perfect balance of programming and downtime, which allowed for oodles of networking as well as socializing. I'd also like to recognize attendees for engaging with each other and with speakers respectfully, even when presented with topics where we disagree. All in all, it was a fantastic experience, and I believe we left with full hearts and recharged batteries, ready to continue the vital work ahead. Next, I'd like to mention a new blog post by the Lesbian Caucus titled Building Real Life Lesbian Community, a Practical Guide, that was published on the 17th, as well as an interview by Lesbian Caucus member Brandy Koken, I hope I pronounced that correctly, with Susan Hawthorne, the Australian writer, poet, political commentator, and co-founder and director of Spinifex Press, whose most recent book referenced in the interview is Lesbian, Politics, Culture, Existence. In an interesting development, the conservative organization Texas Values reported in a recent press release that Mark Wallace, the CEO of Texas Children's Hospital, is set to retire next month. This announcement comes as the hospital continues to receive public and private scrutiny by Texas parents and lawmakers related to the scandal from allegations that it secretly performed chemical and surgical mutilations on minors, as well as engaged in Medicaid fraud, first exposed by TCH whistleblower Dr. Aiton Heim. And finally, in yet another exclusive, Redux reports that an Indiana man found guilty of strangling his 11-month-old stepdaughter to death and currently serving a 55-year sentence for her murder will receive taxpayer-funded gender-affirming surgeries, plural, after the ACLU successfully sued on his behalf, arguing that he had been subjected to cruel and unusual punishment and discrimination in violation of the 14th Amendment by being denied them. Following his arrest, he would later tell a prison official, "All I know is I killed the little effing bitch." And that's all I have today.
Hello from Australia. It's been a big fortnight. Moira Deeming, Member of Parliament, her trial is midway at the moment through of the Liberal state opposition, John Pasuto. Deeming is claiming defamation based on statements he made after the 2023 Let Women Speak event, where he equated her and organisers with Nazis and Nazi ideology. Pasuto is arguing both contextual truth and honest opinion, aka where there's smoke, it's reasonable to assume there's fire. The trial has so far, from his side, recycled all the baseless accusations, slurs, and denunciations seen in 2023 against multiple women, including reading out the Women's Place UK's statement denouncing Kelly J. Keane in full and asking Deeming to denounce it similarly. So the trial continues and is scheduled to finish at the end of next week. The Western Australian Parliament last week pushed through the self-ID bill for birth certificates by use of a standing order created to allow the government to limit debate for urgent bills relating to COVID. The order was not limited in its wording to COVID, however, and is still on the books, so the government is now using it for bills that it wants passed without debate or amendment. The government blocked the bill from going to committee inquiry last month, and last week it gave the upper house just 3 hours to scrutinise 50 clauses before forcing a vote. The vote passed. This is largely because the government has 21 of the 36 seats in the upper house. It's called the Sex or Gender Changes Bill, and even just a motion to change the title to remove sex and have it be called the Gender Changes Bill was voted down with only 7 people in favour. The federal One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, that's, I guess, Australia's populist right-wing party, tried to introduce a bill into federal parliament to reintroduce definitions of woman and man into the Sex Discrimination Act based on biological sex. The proposal also would have removed gender identity from the Sex Discrimination Act. The government denied her even the ability to introduce the bill on the floor of Parliament. She initiated a motion to open a Senate inquiry into the bill, and it too was voted down. I do commend her post on the issue, regardless of one's opinion on other One Nation policies. Her post is very reasonable, and I'll pop a link to it in the chat. Queensland Parliament has passed the Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment Bill. This includes multiple things, but it also includes a criminal offence of serious vilification on the grounds of age, gender identity, impairment, race, religion, sex characteristics, or sexual orientation. Sex in that would, of course, be defined as legal sex, not biological sex. For any public act that includes hatred, extreme ridicule, or that incites hatred, extreme ridicule, or contempt for a person on any of the above grounds, and that would be as determined by a reasonable person who belonged to the target group. Public acts are maybe on private land as long as they're visible in public, and the bill expressly includes that posts on social media are public acts. Acts also include insignia, wearing symbols, displaying colours, if they are associated enough. So it's very drawn very broadly. And I'll put a link to the new law in the chat. Victoria has now announced a public inquiry into implementing a similar law, similar proposed protected characteristics. The gender identity definition is expressly designed to include, they say, drag performers as well. The requirement for any specific threat made will be dropped. It's enough to just incite ridicule. The requirement for intention will be lowered to also include reckless behaviour. There will be a criminal offence and also civil actions. And the bill seeks to criminalise internet activity by people outside Victoria if it victimises a person inside Victoria. But it does currently include a defence for victimisation, not threats, with legitimate political purpose. Public consultation is open on the bill at the moment. That closes the 11th of October this year, and I'll put a link to the public consultation in the chat. Anyone can make a submission. An open letter from Australian clinicians has been published expressing concern over an evidence check they say is flawed and that is being used as the basis for an expansion of New South Wales child gender clinics in opposition to the recommendations of the Cass Review. The Federal Parliament has introduced a misinformation bill. If passed, it would allow any view that the Australian Communications and Media Authority deems to be misinformation to be censored. It covers topics like public health and even banking, but it excludes anything published by the government and establishments such as legacy media. Submissions close the 30th of September, and I'll put a link to a helper page to make a submission in the chat. Australia is now overdue on its periodic review for CEDAW. It's now putting together its report and has given stakeholders only 3 weeks to submit, closing this Thursday, the 26th of September. It opened only on the 5th of September. Submissions will be de-identified, however, and attached as an appendix to the report and sent to the CEDAW committee. So I'll put a link to that in the chat as a last-minute thing. And finally, it's expected that the New South Wales Parliament will vote on the upper house will vote on the equality bill this week. That's the self-ID, surrogacy, prostitution, etc. bill. A small presence is planned for outside Parliament in the mornings to remind senators of the importance of the bill to women. Thank you very much.